Hi guys, and welcome to Technik. Today we're going to be looking at doing a full brake disc and pad change if you've got the Brembo type of fixed caliper. Let's do it. Now before you jack the car up, what you need to do is slacken off your wheel nuts. The reason being is that if you jack the car up first and then try and undo these wheel nuts, the whole wheel will try to turn. Whereas if you do it whilst the weight is still pushing the wheel down to the floor, then you can just slacken these off without moving the whole wheel. So what you want to do is literally half a turn, and then repeat that for each of the wheel nuts, literally half a turn, no more than that. And then the next stage is we'll jack it up, take the weight off, and then we can get the wheel removed completely. So now what we've done, we're ready to remove the wheel bolts completely. So we've lifted the car up just that little bit further, so we've got a gap between the floor and the wheel. And now we just want to get each of these wheel bolts removed in turn. Obviously if you've got an air gun or an impact wrench or something like that, this is the ideal opportunity to use it. Otherwise you can do it old-fashioned way like I am here. And with all of the wheel bolts removed, we'll do a little bit of a wobble and then just slide it forward and put that to one side. So let's have a quick look at how this type of caliper works. It's slightly different to the more traditional type of caliper that you might be used to working on. This is actually fixed. So this is a one-part frame, unlike a kind of a single piston caliper which has a frame with a separate bracket. This is all in one unit. So if you look at it from the end here, what we've got is we've got the two brake pads. There are a few variations, but the same principle applies to all of this type of caliper. So here's your two pads. So you've got these little stop ends on them. So you've got pads. That's the pad backing, goes all the way down. So that's one big pad in there, and obviously there's your second pad in there. You'll notice this large pin that travels through the centre. This is where the variation occurs. Sometimes rather than having one big pin through the centre, where these kind of curves are, you'll have two smaller pins rather than a centre pin, and sometimes you'll have all three. You'll have a centre pin and outer pins. If you have these outer pins, usually these just tap out. So you would get a small punch tool and tap it gently on the end. That would start to slide it back, and then you can press this down and remove that from the rear, and then once that second one's removed, do the same and again press it down and pull that out. We don't have that today on this particular one. This is the spring clip, so this goes underneath your pins, and this basically presses keeps pressure downwards on the pads, stops the pads coming back out. When you buy your new brake pad set that we'll be looking at in a moment, a little bit further into the video, you'll be seeing that the set that we've got comes with brand new replacement clips, so that's a good thing to do as well. The brake pad wear sensor, have a quick look at that as well. It actually slots into the brake pad, a little cutout on the brake pad on the outer pad there, and this cable tucks in here, comes around here, tucks in here, and there's actually that's the electrical connector right there. The other thing to mention as well, as you'll see later in the video, is that these have two bleed nipples. Got one right here, and you've got another one directly on the opposite side right there. So you've got two rather than one, and that obviously corresponds to each of the sets of pistons, as you'll see as we dismantle this. So that's the kind of basic principle of how it works. So let's start getting it dismantled. Okay, so once your wheel is off, what you want to do is hop in and just turn your steering wheel so that the hub face turns outwards like this. It's going to give you obviously much better access working here than it would be if it was turned all the way on the inside there. So first thing we're going to do is we've got the wear sensor cable for the brake pads here, and this actually comes up and the electrical connector is right here, so we need to get that disconnected first of all. Now it sits in a little bracket, and it's got little hooked arms that kind of come around the outside of it and kind of sit it in quite snug, top and bottom, so it can be a little bit tricky to get out. The easiest way is, rather than use the clip down the bottom, I'm not going to get a click on that, is if you come down the front, you can just lift up the little, it's like a little plate. I'll show it to you once the plug's out. You see, as I twist that, it lifts it, so I'm just going to gently twist that there and start to give the whole thing, there he comes, a little bit of a wiggle, like so. You see there's a little catch there, that's what you need to lift it over. If you look down inside, all I was doing is just put my screwdriver in there, and I was just literally lifting this up, to disconnect it from this little catch there. Went in, pushed it forward. So just a quick reference for you for the routing of this this cable. Obviously it attaches here, comes through, and it's like a little kind of lasso built into the bleed nipple cap just there, and then it feeds through this little hole that's built into the side of the caliper, comes down into a clip on the spring there, and then down and seated into its final place just there. Okay, so when we're looking at this type of caliper, they all use exactly the same kind of principle, although the application is sometimes a little bit different. On this particular one, you can see we've actually got one big brake pad on each side, so we have one spring clip in the centre. On some of these types of calipers, you might, instead of having one big pad, this is a 3-pot caliper, so you've got 3 pistons on each side. It might be you might have 4, so you might have 2 and 2, and then you might have 2 brake pads. You'll have a brake pad here, a brake pad here, another one here, another here. So 4 pads, all in one caliper. In which case you will likely have 2 spring clips and 2 separate pins. You'll have 2 smaller clips rather than one in the centre. You'll have one here, and you'll have pins holding it in across here. Sometimes you'll have the 2 pins and you'll have a centre section as well. It won't be not normally a centre pin. You'll have a little bolt-in section in the centre as well. The principle on all of these is exactly the same. It doesn't really matter where the pins are located, they've all got to be tapped out. Now with the ones where you have a separate one on the top and the bottom, you usually got a little pointed end that sticks out of the front right here. And to remove those, what you have to do is get a very fine punch and just gently tap the end of it, and that whole pin will slide. It can be very similar to what you see on this one later on. Same principle, but there's usually no bolt holding the end of it, so you just tap that straight through. The thing to be careful of is obviously if you slip, bang, and you've got painted calipers, it can take a chip out of the paint, so you've got to be really careful. And the even more annoying thing is when you put them back through from the other side, and that pin starts to come out the front, of course, when you're hammering it, that can also cause the paint to pop as well. So unfortunately it's very common on that type. You'll see the little pin in the centre, and they have like a little a raggedy bit of flaked off paint around where they should be. But if you need to remove them, the concept's the same as this pin, as you'll see in this video. This pin goes from this way out and has a little bolt that holds it in place. These ones don't. So literally you can just put that on the end, hammer it, and slide it back through in a similar manner to what you've got here. On this particular one, we've got the one in the centre right here, and we have this the bolt on the end here. So what we need to do is we're going to remove this bolt, and then you can see this pin passes through the body of the caliper here, passes through the brake pad, sits over the top of the spring clip, through the second brake pad, again through the body of the caliper on the other side. So that's keeping everything tight. That's this spring clip that's keeping the pressure downwards to stop those pads coming out. So as we can see on our pin, we've got a kind of bit of corrosion. These brakes should have probably been changed a little while ago. So what I'm going to do to help aid the process of getting this pin out, because I suspect this is going to be quite tricky to get out, it's going to give it a little bit of a clean up around the actual pin on both sides. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some dismantling fluid, like plus gas, liquid wrench, and PV blast. There's 100 different types of a product. I'm just carefully going to put this in, and hopefully that's going to seep into this gap here and make it, and the same on this side, to make it easier to get this pin out, especially if it is slightly corroded, as this one is, which is going to be quite a tight fit. Usually doesn't matter so much on the holes around the actual pads themselves, because the holes in the pads tend to be larger than the holes on the outside. But that's what you want to do, give these a bit of a clean up if yours aren't looking so hot like these aren't, and then put some spray on them as well. So for our bolt here, it's a size 13. Now on this type of pin, because it's not a solid pin, it's got a hole in the middle that the bolt fits into. If you kind of have a look on the end of it, just there, you'll see that it's the wall of it's quite thin. So when you come to tap this out, and you get your punch, whatever size punch it might be. What you don't want to be doing is trying to hit this, because obviously that's either going to go into the hole or damage the outside of it. So to start this moving, what we want to do is actually put this back in, and then you want to hit the head of this to start it moving. And then obviously as you hit that with the hammer, that space will decrease, because the end of the pin will start to be pushed out, and you can undo it a little bit more, hit it a little bit more. The problem is when you get near the end of it, if you get a bit of a stubborn bolt, you don't want to be hitting it when you've only got a tiny bit of the thread. Hopefully this one won't be too bad, but if you do get a stubborn one, you might want to have a look around the workshop and see if you can find one that has the same thread pattern but is longer, because then that will allow you to screw that in and knock the whole thing out of place. So yeah, this one's quite stubborn, unfortunately, so we've got a little bit of corrosion that we'll clean up later. But as you can see, we've pushed it all the way through now. We're just by the second brake pad now. So what we're going to do is, rather than hammer it from this end, we've now got a little bit of a lip there. So we'll grab the punch and we'll just finish it off from this side. Cable's unhooked from the spring clip. You push the cable all the way down, just bring this over the lip here. You should have enough space just to pop that out. So for the removal of these pads, we're going to want to take a little bit of the pressure off of the pistons, and to do that what we've got to do is retract the pistons back into the caliper just a little bit to slide these out. We actually want to pull them back quite a bit, because we're going to be fitting in nice new chunky pads later on. So we actually want them kind of pushed all the way back in. And there's a couple of different ways of doing that. The way that we're going to be doing it today is the Audi workshop way. Let's have a quick discussion on the two different ways of doing it. So when you force the pad back and force the pistons back, what that does is it's going to force the brake fluid back up the pipes and back towards the master cylinder. That's one way of doing it. You can literally do these with your fingers, or you can even put a small screwdriver down in there and just use that to gently lever that back, and you will be able to pull that back. But that will pump the brake fluid back, and that's kind of the kind of traditional way of doing it. And most kind of brake jobs tend to be done that way. The argument for that is they say you could be pushing dirty brake fluid back into the system. And the other argument is if your brake fluid reservoir has been topped up, obviously if it would have been on the factory setting, on the perfect setting, and as these have worn down, then your brake fluid reservoir would have gone down slightly to compensate for that, because you've got more fluid in the calipers. If you then top that up, when you squeeze it back out, you're going to flood the brake fluid reservoir, and it'll overflow into the engine bay. That's the arguments against it. And the Audi Workshop Manual recommends you don't do it that way. They recommend that what you do is you actually connect your brake bleeder onto the brake nipples here and here, and as you rewind them back, instead of the brake fluid being pumped back up into the system, it'll come out of your pipe here, and you can collect it, and then you can just top up at the end of the job as required. So that's the way that we're going to be doing it today. It's a good idea, before you push the pistons back in at all, just to have a look down and check the condition of what you can see at this stage of the rubber gaiters that are on each of the pistons. So just kind of have a good look around as best you can and make sure you're happy with what you can see. So obviously when we press this back in, you won't be able to see quite as much of it. These actually look pretty good, especially considering the condition of some of the rest of the brakes here. So yeah, we'll proceed. So what we want to do is just carefully release the caps on both of the bleed nipples. So today we're going to be using this little homemade brake bleeder tool just to collect the leftover brake fluid. You can spend quite a lot of money on these tools. If you're interested in one of these, we've done a video on how to make one of these for virtually nothing, and we'll add a link for you in the information section below. Okay, now for loosening these off, they're size 11 usually. Traditionally use a ring spanner. The only problem with these is if you're worried this is going to be tight, or might have some gunk around the edges and you have to crack it off, then this is like the worst shape you can possibly have for potentially rounding these off, because obviously it's very, very close to round when you get these little 12 pointers. So if you do get a stubborn one, you're using that kind of tool, that unfortunately can round them off. If you're worried about whether it's stubborn or not, what you can do is just grab yourself a size 11 socket, put that over the top and just undo it a little bit so you can see it's just facing just off centre. So if I move, yeah, there you go, move it just a fraction. Yeah, you can see I've moved that around. Do it again for you. There. So now you can see that the flat's facing us. I haven't actually cracked it open yet. There we go. But if you're worried about it, that's the way to do it, with a good socket, because that will give you full grip. Ideally, once you're happy, obviously you can use any type of spanner that you like to do it. They do these special spanners that are kind of 6.5 sided, if you like, and sorry, 4.5 sided, and they fit around it quite nicely and also allow you to work around the pipe. If you've got a ring spanner, put that on first. Once you know that it's definitely going to open, pipe on the top, and then we'll open this up. Just put the pipe over the top. You need to make sure you get a nice tight fit, like so. Now ready to slacken it off a little bit. There, you can just see the fluid just starting to come up out of the pipe there. So now what I'm going to do, this would have freed up this brake pad, so in theory, yeah, you can do it with your hands. I can retract the caliper like so, and then I've got to do it before the air gets back down into it. Yeah, we got it. There. So before the air gets down the pipe and gets back into the caliper, you want to make sure that you've closed it off, like so. So that's that one fully retracted, and obviously the excess fluid has just gone straight into a bottle down the bottom there. And if you found that when you've squeezed them back, rather than them going flat, you've kind of created an angle, so you can see that's, yeah, the pistons aren't pretty good actually. But what you can do is you can put a flathead screwdriver in there, just put a bit of pressure on it, and then we're going to release this and just level that brake pad off with that kind of last motion. May or may not be required. Keep the pressure on it, and then as soon as you open this, yeah, it'll start to come straight out, like so. And then just close it off. Again, not letting the air come back down the pipe. Perfect. And then obviously what we need to do is just repeat the process exactly the same on the other side. You can see that they've opened up a really nice gap there, fully retracted, and the pad's now nice and loose. So exactly the same process, get this one pushed back as well. So there's the old set of pads. So if your pads aren't as worn as these ones are, you've got the wear sensor. If your new pads that you've bought don't come with these, you can reuse them, but only if they haven't been worn through. What happens is once these little sensors wear through, they wear through with the pad. Once they wear through, it breaks the circuit, and you have to replace them. They can be removed. They're a bit of a fiddle. If you kind of get all the dirt out of there, give them a bit of a wobble, you will be able to get those out. But like I said, if they have cut through, and the brake light is on this car, but I don't know whether it's the front or the rear. We're doing both on this particular car. So in this instance, I get rid of these anyway. We're going to be replacing these, but they are reusable. As long as you haven't had the brake pad light come on, you definitely should have no problems reusing those if you need to. So to be able to remove the brake disc from the hub, we've got to first remove the caliper. It's quite simple, as you see, as we progress. There's usually just 2 bolts that hold these things on, and the whole thing can be removed. We've got a slightly unusual setup, as you can see on this particular one. We have a hard line coming out the back of it rather than a flexi hose. Very often on these you just have a flexi hose coming out the top, so it's dead easy. You can just undo your 2 bolts and just hang it up either by some cable ties or a bungee strap, as you'll see later in the video. But because we do have this fixed line, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So that's what you want to do when you come to do yours. Have a look on the back and see whether you've got a flexi hose. That makes it easy. If you do have a fixed line, as we have, you've got to kind of work out how that fixed line works. We'll show you how this particular one works as we progress in the video, and yours will no doubt be something similar. So if you do see a fixed line, go, how on earth am I going to move that when I take this off, so I don't want to damage it? There's always a workaround. So we'll show it to you on this particular caliper, but hopefully yours will be a flexi hose rather than a fixed. So we have this fixed brake line, and if you follow it, you can see it actually comes up and it does change into a flexi hose. Just here you've got this coupling here, and from here upward is the flexible hose. So that's going to give us the freedom we need to be able to manipulate the caliper. So we need effectively this section here needs to be freed, and so what they've done here, they've actually made this whole section is a bracket. You see it moving there, and just down in there we've got a little bolt that goes through and attaches onto the front, onto the rear of the arm there. So what we need to do is take that out, and then that will allow this whole bracket to pop out. And then of course what you've got then is you've got the flexibility of the top half that's going to allow you to maneuver the caliper, whereas if we try to leave this in place and move the caliper, obviously this line's not going to move at all, so you're going to end up damaging it. So what we're doing is by removing this bracket, we're removing the stress from this line onto the flexi line, and of course on the flexi line, no problem, it's flexible. So let's do it. Okay, so in my case here, I can see I've got quite a lot of dirt and gunk built up in the head here. It's like an Allen key hex head, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a scrape. So I want to make sure that I get that tool in as deep as I can so I don't round anything off. Just going to give that a good scrape out, get all the dirt out, and I'm just going to give that a quick spray with the dismantling fluid, liquid wrench we're using today. Size 6 hex. It's got a little bit of corrosion in there. I'm just making sure that's fully seated. Now you should find this whole bracket is loose. You should be able to pull it out like so. And that's going to give us the freedom that we need. So on the rear of the caliper here, we can see that it's held on by these 2 large bolts just here. Again, just to help us, we're just going to put a little bit of the dismantling fluid. Top and bottom. Let's give that 5 minutes to soak in. So grab yourself a breaker bar or an air gun if you've got one. Size 21. Just crack those off. Okay, so that's your bolts there. What I'm going to do, just once I remove the second one, just put that back in like that. So on these particular discs, we've actually got this little safety bolt that stops the disc accidentally falling off. If yours doesn't have this, or as an added double safety measure, what you can do is just put your wheel bolt just in like that. And then when we remove the caliper, should this be loose, or maybe this bolt be broken or something like that, this disc cannot fall from the car and land on your feet. It's just an extra safety thing, well worth doing. So now the disc is safe, just carefully remove your 2 bolts, remembering to support the weight of it, so we do have a fixed line. Just carefully lift the caliper up. there. That's what I was talking about, giving us that little bit of flexibility just there. So find yourself somewhere suitable. To add your cable tie or your bungee strap, just so you can ensure the weight is not on this fixed brake line. That's good, yeah, happy with that. And that's all you're doing is just finding a suitable place to strap it up, just so you can ensure that all the pressure is on the flexi part of the brake hose, not on your fixed part just there. So this particular one is a Torx size 50. This is where if you've got a impact gun, definitely use it, because you have to counter hold against the screw. Can be a little bit fiddly. Doing this the manual way today. That's what most people watching will have to do. And there's the little screw there. So right now the only thing that's holding the disc onto the hub is our little safety bolt. And ideally you always want to put this kind of as close to the 12 o'clock mark at the top there as possible. So as we can see, our disc is fairly well stuck to the hub there. So we're going to have to get the hammer onto this to tap it off. What we'll do, before we fit the new disc onto the car, I'll give you a little tip on something that you can do to help prevent exactly this scenario that we've got here, when the disc sticks onto the hub. Can be really annoying and sometimes can be really hard to get off. Hopefully this one won't be too bad, but we'll show you how to avoid this in the future. And just carefully take the weight of your disc and screw your bolt, and then you can get rid of the old disc. So now's a good opportunity. You don't get to access this part of the car very often. So now's a good opportunity to grab a wire brush and give it a bit of a clean up. You can also put a bit of brake cleaner on here. If you are putting brake cleaner on, just try not to get it down in towards the wheel bearing. Try and control where you're actually putting it. So give it a good clean, and also the other thing is, because you're working around brakes, always a very, very good idea to wear a mask whilst you do this work. So what you can do is just grab your copper grease, and you can just add a really thin layer to the whole of this face, including the outsides of the little support arms, just here. Nice thin layer, and what this will do is basically just creates that little layer that will stay there. So next time you come to remove this, you'll have this layer, and all you've got to do is break this layer rather than so this will stop any kind of corrosion building up or any rubbish getting in there. And this should help prevent your disc getting stuck the next time you come to remove it. Okay, so quick look at the new discs we have here. The brand is Genius. I'm not familiar with this brand, I've not used these before. Yeah, no need to apply brake cleaner on these. I thought so when I saw about the coating. Usually what you'll find is your brake discs, what they do is they actually apply a very thin layer of grease to them to stop them rusting whilst they're in the bag. So when you open it, you've got a nice fresh, shiny brake disc ready to fit. These particular ones don't need it, so what we'll do is we'll show you a clip of a different brake job that we've done, showing you how to properly clean up your brake discs using brake cleaner. So to clean your disc, all you do is you grab your brake cleaner again and give it a good wipe, and you want to do this several times. Make sure you get rid of all of the grease that's on there. As you can see, it really does have quite a nasty layer of grease on there. So I'm going to wash off this whole thing using the brake cleaner, and likewise around the side of the centre and also the face of the centre as well. So this whole thing is going to be cleaned using the brake cleaner. So now we just need to flip it over and clean the other side. Now obviously the underside of this had grease on it. That's soaked into this part of the cardboard. So I'm going to use the other part. And again, exactly the same with the brake cleaner, the whole of the face and also the inside. Okay, easiest way is to grab yourself a wheel nut, identify whereabouts your little locking pin is going to end up being. And so obviously we want to make sure we try and align that. I find it's usually a bit quicker and easier because you've got a lot more play, length in the wheel nut. It's a lot easier just to pop that on, just to hold that safely. That's definitely not going to fall off, and then we can concentrate on getting the locking nut back in. So your little locking bolt has only 15 Newton meters. You can torque that up to spec with the torque wrench if you like. 15 Newton meters isn't a lot. It's basically just enough to hold it into place. So just tighten it, but don't over tighten it. You'll be absolutely fine. So before we refit the caliper, now's a good time to check the condition. We had a quick look at the rubber seals down the sides of the brake pads whilst they were out before we retracted them. So again, you just want to go around and check the general condition of the rubber seals and the pistons, make sure everything looks okay and you're happy with everything. Any dirt or whatever, get your wire brush in there. And give those a bit of a clean out. Now just a kind of a perfect opportunity. Again, if you're using the wire brush, be careful. Again, talking about these rubber seals. You don't want to be damaging those. But now's a really good time just to give it a bit of a wipe over. Just get rid of some of the worst of it. These aren't too bad. Get rid of some of the worst of it. So you've got a nice open view of them. The other point that's quite good to give a quick clean off is where the caliper, just on here where the face, where the caliper bolts on. You've got the metal face here and a metal face there. It's a good idea just to give these a quick clean over. And likewise on the inside of the caliper, you've got exactly the same thing. Yeah, we've got some rubbish around there, so just give them a quick wipe over as well. Make sure you've got one of your caliper bolts ready to go. Take the weight of your caliper and cut your cable tie, or remove your battery strap. Get rid of that. And carefully manoeuvre the caliper around. Get it to its approximate position, and then we're going to get one of these bolts in. Let's get it started. There it goes. Just so we know that it's safe. And second bolt in. There we go. So now you want to get those tightened up as far as you can, and we're going to torque these up to a factory spec. So once they're snugged up, grab your torque wrench and torque them up to the proper specification. Obviously that's going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, model to model. So the best thing to do if you're unsure of the torque specification is to go onto Google and do a quick search via Google. You will not be the first person that's asked this question. To type in something like, correct, what's the torque spec for my whatever make and model and year, and you should find dozens of people. Always check it from two or three different sources. Don't just believe it from the first source that you see. Hopefully find two or three people saying the same thing, so it's highly likely to be correct. Now on this particular car, Audi Q7, these need to be torqued up to 270 Newton meters. Okay, so next what you want to do is just manipulate your bracket a little bit and get the hole in the bracket aligned with that little threaded hole, and obviously put that screw, replace the screw back in there. There's no specified torque for that, just get it up so it's nice and snug. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the brake pads we'll be using today. Semi-metallic, brand is Positive Plus. I've not seen nor used this brand before. This set comes with the new spring clips. That's perfect. So we've got 2 of those, one for each caliper. And here's the pads themselves. As you can see, these come with the new brake pad wear sensors, already fitted and ready to snap into place. So that's perfect. So when you're choosing your brake pads, something to bear in mind. Usually for only a few dollars more, maybe an extra £5 or £6, $6-7, whatever extra, you can get them with the cables and with the clips. It's well worth doing, because these to buy a set of these on their own are probably like £12, £13, $15. A set of those is probably £6 or £7, $10, something like that. But when you buy it all in one package, you'll get much better value. So when you're choosing your brake pads, if you can, try and make sure you get a set that already got your wear sensors and your spring clips. And a good idea, especially if you've had problems knocking the clips out, is just to give the insides of the holes here a quick wipe around, just to get rid of any build-up of any scum. Don't do it too hard. You don't want to kind of scratch or score it particularly, just to knock off any loose gunk that we have in there. So obviously do that on both sides. Okay, before we refit the new pads, you see we've got like 3 sections, and they correspond to where each of the 3 pistons fit on these particular pads. On the back they do come with this little pad, which should stop them from binding. However, it's always a good idea to add a little bit of your dedicated brake grease. You can buy great brake grease from any automotive supplier, and you use these for various jobs around your brake system. So it's a good idea, as we're going to do here, just to apply a light coat, and that will help prevent the anything binding to the actual back of the pads here. Careful not to touch the faces of the pads. They are absorbent to grease, and obviously you do not want grease to be soaking in to the faces of your brake pads. So just give them a bit of a wipe over. It's only a thin layer that you need. That's plenty. And obviously repeat that on both. The other place that you might want to carefully put a little bit is when you look down to caliper, you've got those like 4 metal pins, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, that sit either side of the disc. And just in here is where these touch those. So I'll put a tiny bit just on there as well. Again, be careful not to get them near the face of the pads, and then repeat the same on the second pad. So we'll start by fitting the first pad. This pad is the one that has the cable attached, and this is just long enough to reach back to your plug, whereas obviously if this went onto the other side it wouldn't work. So make sure that you're installing this one to the inside, as we are here. Just carefully feed them down. That's one. Same process for your second pad. Yeah, perfect. So for our particular pin, we had some problems getting this out. It was a lot harder than it should have been. So you've got this kind of build-up of gunk that's built up over the years. So what I'm going to do before we attempt to refit this, I'm going to get the old trusty brake cleaner and give this a really good clean and get the wire brush on it. So I've given them a good clean off with the wire brush and the brake cleaner. He's come up a lot better than he was. He's not perfect. We'll see how he goes. If he's difficult to fit, we can always get a little Dremel tool on there and just shave a little bit of that off very carefully, but I think that should be enough to get that refitted okay. So we've just added a little bit of our brake grease just to our pin, because ours was a little bit tricky to get out, and we've got our spring clip ready. So it's a good idea to grab yourself something like a punch, and so you can press the, give you a little bit of manipulation, because the springs can be very, very tight. So I'm almost at a position ready to tap this in. So what I'm going to do in a second, I'm going to grab my hammer, I'm going to push down on there, compress the spring so that lines up, and I'm going to tap it on the end. One thing to note is, you see this has got two flat edges. If you come around to the side, you see it's got a rounded head, but it's flat on the top and on the bottom, and obviously that needs to seat correctly into that. It's like a slot. Perfect. You see we've closed that gap up completely, and we're through everything as we should be. Everything's looking good. You can still manipulate the clip if you like. See, it wasn't quite centered, it was off to that side, but you can still move it by hand, get it exactly centered so you're happy with it. So now you've got the little bolt that goes in the end here, and you want to torque that up to factory specification. Again, you might need to check that, but on the car we're working on today, the Q7, it's 30 Newton meters. Now we just need to route our two cables. This one's easier to start at the far end. That one in there. Next, you've got this little kind of hoop around next to the brake nipple there. Feeds in like that, and then finally you've got this little cutout, and what I'm trying to do here is kind of get the spacing even, so rather than having it really tight there and having a load of leftover there, trying to space it out evenly between them. And likewise here, we don't want that pulled tight, we want a little bit of leeway there for it. That's it. Just make sure you're happy with everything there, and that's the first one. Okay, so on your second one, we've got a little cutout in the disc itself, just down in there, and this is the connector. The thick part, so you've obviously got a thin part, a little metal slot, and then the thick part. The thick part is the brake pad face side of it, so that goes towards the inside of the centre of the caliper. You can always cross-reference that against your other one there. You see the thick side is on the inside, facing the centre of the caliper. And make sure you've got both the bleed nipple caps securely back in place. Okay, now on the Q7 here, on the Audi Workshop manual, it recommends that when you finish this process you do a full brake bleed. The brake bleed interval on the Q7 is every 2 years anyway, so that might sit quite well with you know, how often you're doing your brake jobs or whatever. So one thing to bear in mind is if you did this properly, when we actually applied the pressure to push the fluid back out of here, we didn't let any air come back down in. So as long as you didn't have air go in, there should not be any air in your system. So in theory, and we've only used a little bit of brake fluid just to compress those. So in theory, you could go back up to your back into the engine bay and just top up your brake fluid level. But it's always a good idea to do a full brake fluid change, and it's not that complex on these at all, and we're actually producing a full video on that process. I'll have a link for you below in the information section, so if you want to check that out. But that is the Audi Workshop recommendation, and we'll leave it at your discretion as to whether you do that or whether you just top back up. So now that you've got your pads in place, what you should do is you should hop into the car, and you want to compress your brake pedal a couple of times. Don't push it all the way down to the floor, just use short strokes, pressing down about halfway, and that will just seat these into the correct position. It will reset all of the 6 pistons per caliper, get that all nice and tidy. Once you're happy that that's been done, you want to take the car for a short journey, just revert, ideally backwards and forwards just on your driveway, just testing that the brakes feel okay before you actually drive the car. Assuming that they feel okay, take it for a short drive around the block at low speeds before you go and take it on the motorway or the highway. Just make sure you're safe, make sure you're happy, and the brakes feel good and responsive as they should. So if this video has been helpful for you, before you leave, please be sure to hit the like button, that's the thumbs up, and also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have literally hundreds more videos dedicated to Audi, so please do check that out. Thanks for watching, we'll see you again.